What's up, y'all? You're listening to the My Aggie Nation podcast. I'm Alex Miller with the Eagle, joined by Robert Cessna. Cease. It's August, which means one thing. Football season's around the corner, and A&M football team has kicked off fall camp this week. You and I have been out to practice each of the last 2 days. What's really your big question for the Aggies heading into preseason practice?
Well, I mean, I think they've got a lot of question marks. We're in the season. It's funny, wherever you go, people want to talk about football. They want to talk about, what do you think about the Aggies? What do you expect? And it never fails. Everybody's getting real pumped up right now. And I say that in a kind way because even nationally, I had to do my AP Top 25 ballot was due yesterday. And you look around, a lot of people are putting A&M at those last one or two spots. And I just have to laugh because everybody's enthusiastic. That's the great thing about it. Like you said, you ought to practice last couple of days. What do you get out of that? Well, we're close. So I got the pads on. What did we do yesterday? We booked our flight to Florida. I mean, the Florida game is not that far away. So what seemed like so far, long ago, but to get a little bit more to your answers, I still think they've got a lot of question marks. And you wrote a good story in the paper. They go today is, we don't know about the offensive line, who's going to be the other linebacker. There's a lot of great parts in the secondary, but how do they all fit together? Is running back by committee? What about the wide receivers? And, I was at practice last night. I was talking to someone, and they go, what if you had to say, what would be your biggest deal? And I go, I'm still not sold on Connor Wegman. What I've seen of him, I've liked about him. He's not one of the people you wrote about because he's QB1, but until he plays 12-game schedule for me, I've got my doubts. And, of course, we're not going to know about that for 12 games.
Well, here's what we do know. Connor Wegman is the quarterback. He's going to be the starting quarterback. It sounds like Trey Zune at left tackle is pretty locked in. Torian York at linebacker is pretty locked into his spot. The defensive line is always rotating, right? We know that in the SEC, they rotate those guys in and out like hockey lines, right? But starting up front, you got to think Nick Scorton, Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, probably DJ Hicks. That's kind of where you're going to start at from there. And then, like you said, from there on out, it's kind of any man's game. I mean, there are battles going on across the board. But here's something I've taken away is it seems like Elko, in some aspects, likes the depth that he has at a number of these positions, even though none of the spots are maybe nailed down and guys' names are written in pen.
Well, I'd have to agree with you. And you'd think with his defensive background, you're right. I don't think the defensive line is a problem. I think it's a plus, an asset, and I think everybody agree with that. You got York, how much they need from the other guy to have good linebackers. So I'm not really worried about Elko. And I think you touched on something that Jimbo preached all the time about how great competition is. What his teams failed to do is they had all these 5 stars and 4 stars, quote, competing for each other. They had so many weak positions at the end of every year, except for the 9-1 season, really. And really, his first year when he took over the talent that he was left by someone. But we never saw a lot of years where he'd say, oh, man, these 3 or 4 guys really stepped up, and they were surprises. And for A&M to be, almost for any team to be real successful, even somebody like Oregon won the national championship, you have to have 3 or 4 guys step up that you didn't expect. And A&M never does that. I mean, A&M, when's the last time you had, it's like, oh, man, that guy came out of nowhere to win all conference honors. It just hadn't happened.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back. Maybe Travion Williams. He kind of busted onto the scene.
I just did it off my top of my head. We rant and rave a lot, but I'm saying
Edgerrin Cooper was good last year.
Well, you're right. Edgerrin Cooper came out of nowhere. I mean, a little bit. Everybody said he had potential. That's why we talk sometimes and talk to fans. You're right. That'd be a good, perfect example. But the bad thing about him was he is great breakthrough year, and he's gone. I mean, he did 1 year, and you go, man, if you had him back, how good he was, because I wasn't sold on him because you know what? always impressed me with. He was so fast and so quick, but he never got to where he should have been until last year.
Something that caught my attention on day one was these guys. They're going through their drills, right? And Tommy Moffitt, who, I mean, they've talked about him time and time again throughout the offseason and the impact that he's had in the strength realm. But him and some of these assistants, they're screaming at the top of their lungs, full speed. They're going full speed, and then you hear this guy over the PA, and he's like, effort, and he's calling out these guys' names, and apparently it's a positive thing. Like he's giving them praise for giving effort in that moment. I mean, the intensity of the practices that I've seen the first 2 days is it's really up there.
Well, I have to laugh as I walked out and you see, it's a new coaching staff. You don't know all those people, and it's going to take time, whatever. And I laughed, and when I saw Moffitt and everybody's wrote about Moffitt, and I'm thinking, is anybody more popular, in Bryan College Station other than Chick-fil-A than Tommy Moffitt? Because everybody, it's amazing how he's polarized. Like, this team will be better because of Tommy Moffitt.
We will see.
We will see.
We will see. I mean,
that's the party line from everybody.
That's what they're saying. But I mean, what you see in practice is you see energy, you see intensity, and typically those are two good things. But as we know, we'll see how it translates to the field. And hey, A&M's going to have a good first test that week one against Notre Dame.
Well, once again, as I was talking again to somebody, and he goes, "Hey, I don't see much different than when Jimbo was here, as far as this is an onlooker, wasn't a media person, somebody I knew in the community, said like, hey, we're not going to know. We're not going to know till it gets gone." And that's a little bit what you touched on. But as I told him, man, I like the Notre Dame game because I know the players like it, but I always want to know where they're at. And, sometimes like that one year they were really good, and they had the 10-game schedule. They started with Vanderbilt, which is, you might say, a dog, and they had a rough time beating Vanderbilt, and I thought they were in trouble, but that turned out to be a good year, and Vanderbilt turned out to be a pretty good test for them. But Notre Dame, I read up enough great lines, so we'll know right off the bat how good is A&M's offensive line and defensive line. And that's what you want to know where you're at when the SEC. I don't think they'll get as good a test against Bowling Green in the lines, but you'll know where they're at. And I love it. It's here. The game's here. It won't take long for us to get in. We're already in the football mode, but when Notre Dame's coming to town, it gets your attention.
Well, there'll be plenty to talk about A&M football leading into the season. I'm sure we'll get to hear from Mike Elko and some players next week, get to go out and see some practices. Cease, it's the Olympics. What's your favorite Olympic sport?
I'm not a big Olympic person.
Okay.
I've got to admit, and people always ask me, I don't like the fact over the years, it's changed now. It was amateur sports, but it really wasn't, particularly the foreign countries. It was their professional teams. And that's why we love the Miracle on Ice. I mean, because those were college kids basically went and beat Russia's best. Well, now everybody has their own, it's all pros. It's just the minor leagues. And, of course, we see some of these Aggies that, God bless them, they get to go for their countries, whether it's Grenada or somebody like that, and some of them are finishing way down because they are amateur athletes, but most of them are not. So I guess I need to ask you I have enough to deal with without Olympics. So what do you like about the Olympics? Because I know a lot of people do like the Olympics because people go, oh, this is going to be on tonight. So even though it's replay, I'm going to watch it. So what are you going to watch? What replays would you watch?
Ooh, I'm a big Gold Zone guy. So NBC, they got their Gold Zone broadcast, right, where it goes from event to event that's, going for the gold. And that's just nice because it's like, the peak action, sport to sport, right? I mean, that's the best way to do it. But, hey, Austin Krajicek, tennis player from A&M. He's in the doubles finals. He's going to at least get a medal. He's got a chance to win at least a silver. He's got a chance to go for gold. Right before we got in here, looked like Shamir Little and Bryce Deadman broke the world record 4x4 relay for Team USA in the prelims.
Mixed? Was that the mixed? Or
yeah,
something along those lines. Yeah. But anytime you can break a record, anytime you get a gold medal, really anytime you get any medal, is a big deal. But as we jump around and I know whet people's appetite. I know you're working on a story about the A&M baseball team. I will say, getting back in town the last few weeks, football is upon us, but I am surprised that the people talk baseball to me because whether it's I think it's twofold, maybe even threefold. They go to the College World Series, the Schlossnagle deal, the fact that they got so many people entering the portal, but they all came back. They added people. A lot of people come up to me and go, hey, how about the way that baseball thing played out? So a lot of people, I don't know if they're asking you the same, but I'm surprised some people ask me that.
Baseball, you know why it feels like football season has crept up on us?
Because
of baseball.
You're right.
I mean,
you're right.
This has been the longest and the shortest summer that I can remember being here. This is my fifth summer here. And I mean, the run, the fallout, the regrouping, I mean, it was up, low, back up on the roller coaster. And it seems like things are starting to level out now that, the draft is over, the roster is set, the coaches are here. I went to the A&M Board of Regents meeting yesterday. The Regents gave President Welsh and anyone else who needs to be a part of those contract negotiations the green light to finish the deal with Michael Early to sign his contract. So, things are moving. Michael Early's the baseball coach. A&M's got a pretty talented roster. Sounds like we might need to be going out to fall baseball a little more this year. See,
people care.
Yeah, people do care.
But I'm a firm believer, really, so I was a young kid, every sport has its season. And for the Aggies' sake, hopefully baseball gets on the real back burner in a hurry here, way in the back burner, because if you're talking baseball in September and October, we got problems because, this is the year 12 teams go to the college football playoff. So as I mentioned, some people are putting down A&M as a possible 24 or 25 in the nation starting out. If you could have a Ouija board or call God and you're saying that A&M is the 25th team in the country right now going into the season, then you're saying, wow, you're just a few victories away from being in the top 12. So it's going to be a different year for college football.
This is the first time we've done a podcast since the SEC Media Days cease. A&M was picked to finish 9th by the media out of 16, going into the season. What'd you think of that? Where do you think A&M should fall in line in that order?
I can honestly say it's secret, but I think I did have them 9th when it was said and done. And you have to go on what you have done, not what you could do. And I had to laugh because, once again, there's a couple people pick Vanderbilt to win the SEC. And some year they're going to be right, but I might not be alive. But, it's like it's not where you hope they are or whatever, but A&M just has too many question marks. And I'll be quite honest with you, how you don't pay attention to teams. I didn't really realize how good a season, record-wise and everything, Oklahoma had last year. Texas goes to college football playoff, and I know the year before everybody wanted to run Venables off in his first year, and so you kind of put them in the back burner. We don't cover the Big 12. And they had heavy losses, but, they accomplished a lot last year. And, it was in the Big 12 or the small 12, depending how you want. But I think, once again, is with the beauty of the SEC is they're 9th for a reason, but it doesn't take too long to get to the top 3. I mean, you start beating 2 or 3 teams that are above you. And the beauty of A&M is I think they also play like 3 or 4 teams that are picked underneath them. So A&M does have a favorable schedule this year. And I always have to chuckle. Anytime we've talked about A&M having a favorable schedule, I would say in the last decade it just hadn't worked out. So maybe we shouldn't say that.
Yeah, based on the standings, Texas, Missouri, and LSU were all picked ahead of A&M. Those are 3 teams A&M's got to play, of course. So you got to think by the preseason poll, people are picking A&M to go 5-3 in the conference. Is probably a fair way to put that.
Yep, you got that right. And then they're saying, oh, Arkansas is behind them, and Auburn's behind them, and Mississippi State's behind them, and
Florida.
South Carolina's behind them, and Florida's behind them. But as I told somebody else, I said, yeah, all those schools are circling A&M because they said if they beat A&M, then they move up a couple. So that will be the beauty of the SEC, as always.
Well, Cease, anything else we need to have a dialogue on before we wrap this up?
It's here. I mean, we had our high school football day the other day. As I mentioned, we're booking trips. We're looking. We're going to do this story this time. Football season is here, and it was pretty interesting to go out. And they started the 2 segments indoors. And I went out a little bit last year. I think I went to 2 practices, maybe in the spring or whatever. But having those doors open, that is a huge facility.
It's massive.
Then to go out on the field, I mean, and I like the way they did it because I said, oh, they're going to be indoors. It's going to be so cold. You know, you need to face the elements. But they were indoors for 2 and went out. I like the way they did it.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of local, got to see Nick Scorton out there. I mean, the transformation of that kid from when we covered him in high school to where he is now is we've talked about it time and time again, but just seeing him out there in practice, I mean, that is a big guy.
Well, you can see why a lot of teams wanted him because you can plug him in and talk about 20 transfers, 21. Well, there's one you know is a legit starter and a possible conference deal player, and those are not easy to come by.
Well, hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the My Aggie Nation podcast. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage on A&M sports leading into the season, whether it's football, soccer, volleyball, or even cross country. It's coming quick, Cease. It's coming quick.
It's here, buddy. We got to run. We got work to do.
All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.